Hello, I'm Kathleen McDermott, and you're listening to Your Life, Your Way. I'm here to remind you that you are not alone. I know life's challenges can be freaking hard, and life can feel like we are on one wild roller coaster ride. My guests and I are here to inspire you to embrace the possibilities, because you can get off that wild ride and absolutely create a life that you love waking up to every day, because your life is your gift to live your way. Good morning. I am Kathleen. Welcome to Your Life, Your Way. And I am quite excited for my guest today and her topic, because her topic is, when I first heard about this beautiful soul, I began to realize that, and in her words, I am not broken. My guest today is Jenn Phipps, and she is going to talk with us and explain and share what it means to be multi-passionate, and especially what it means to be multi-passionate in a linear world. What exactly is multi-passionate? I'm very anxious to hear and have her tell us about what this is and her journey. And also, I would like to have her remind me that I would like to talk about the elephants.
About the what?
The elephants.
Oh, the elephants.
Yes,
Okay.
so we're going to have to get to that. So Jenn, welcome. I thank you so much for being here with me and all of us today. Please tell us a little bit more about you. And also I'd like to have you share about your Permission to Change Academy and your Permission to Change podcast. So please tell us about Jenn Phipps.
Thank you, Kathleen. I've been excited to do this. And I know it's been, kind of a process in the works to get here. And thank you for having me. And yeah, so let's see. So my world is right now around this whole concept of permission to change. And the idea is that I think there's a lot of people that were how I was, where I thought, because I liked so many different things and I couldn't just do one thing forever or even at a time, that I was broken, that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't grounded enough, that I didn't have the stick with it, all the things that people sort of label onto you when you are always trying new things. And then honestly, it didn't really matter what people said, because that was just who I was and I was going to do it anyways, because I just absolutely could not do one thing forever. But there was this self-doubt as I was traveling through that time, until I actually came upon this TED Talk by a lady named Emily Wapnick, and she did this TED Talk about multi-potentialites. And I listened to it and went, oh, that's what I am. And I hate labels, but it was nice to just kind of feel like there was a community of people that were also like me. Ironically, we are all nothing alike. That's kind of the beauty of the multi-potentialite. But we are also have this underlying thing of we are multi-passionate. We have so many passions, whether they're hobbies or careers or adventures or whatever it might be, that's what is our jam. It's not the pick a niche, pick a thing and fully all in. And so when I heard her and I went, oh, okay, I'm not broken. This is who I am. I'm wired this way. There's got to be a reason for it. And that I could start to embrace it. And instead of being sort of casual about, okay, I'm doing this or doing that, and I would just kind of slide into it and then let people sort of recognize that I had done something different once I was already there, I just went, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And I was much more open to saying, oh, I'm trying this now and I'm doing that, and not being so kind of behind the scenes of my changes. Because here's what would happen is, if I would do something and then once it was successful and people knew about it, then they didn't have as much to say. They couldn't knock you down because, well, all right, she pivoted and it's working. So, all right, that's just who she is now or what she's doing now. But when you're in the process of it, or goodness forbid, it didn't work out for whatever reason, whether I didn't like it or whatever. I mean, we all have failures, things that we try and they just don't work. Then those were the things that you would hear a lot about. So I would just keep my mouth shut until I knew it was going to work. But she really gave me that permission to change, to be whatever, and to let other people know that I was whatever the next thing was. And so then I was able to start bringing back in my community of around when I would make changes. And that's helps you be so much more successful when you're making a change, is to bring in those mentors and bring in the people that can expand you and bring you to that next level. So that is what that's kind of how I came from being just, I've always been one. I just didn't know what it was. And I didn't know that it was okay.
I can relate because I just said this to you when we got on, that when I first saw a post that you shared in a common group that we're in, I grasped it and said, oh, there's a connection here. And as I learned more about you, I said exactly what you said. I'm not broken. It's okay for me to have been the way I've been and the way that I am. So please tell us, how is it a challenge? I'm assuming it's a challenge in a linear world.
Oh yeah,
I can relate.
That is one of the biggest things that, as I've navigated through this and grown in it and really settled into it, and can sort of step back and look at the multi-passionate in a from the outside and say, and as I'm meeting more people who are and starting to learn, I really recognize why it was such a problem for me early on. Why did I have such a challenge with who I was? Is because we do not live in a society that celebrates that, having lots of passions. And there's a lot of words for it that people would more, maybe be recognized, like the Renaissance man, or the jack of all trades, or the polymath, but some of them have sort of this negative connotation, right? It's like, especially like something like the jack of all trades, that's like, oh yeah, you're a master of none. Well, that's not what the whole saying was, and prior to, I think it was 1940s, or even maybe before that, the Renaissance person, the jack of all trades, was actually revered. They were the person that brought, they were the one in the village or the town that people looked up to. They were the ones they went to with all the different things. They had all these skill sets that could sort of solve so many problems in a community. And then as we became more industrialized and we started having these factories and people would have a job that was their career and they just went into it, we became more and more specialized in the things that we do. And it started to be then, well, you have to go from A to Z in your career to be successful. And so it sort of fell away, the recognition of this more diverse personality was king. I say that with,
Understood.
king, whatever. So it's interesting because we traveled down this path and our school systems aligned for that. We went from one room classrooms where all the ages were diverse and all the things we're learning were, you weren't just learning about one thing at one time, to very, we've compartmentalized down and everything is so linear now. Even sports, look at these kids, like if you don't start your sport at 7 so that you can be like the rock star at 15, well, why would you even bother starting? I mean, that's kind of an overall, at least in the US, feeling that comes out a lot. The gymnast is in the skater or figure skater, or the basketball player. Like, it's even those, it's not just careers. We really created this very linear specialist society, and we need them. I mean, I don't want the surgeon that has so many things they barely understood what their surgery schedule is like and when they open me up, they know what they're doing. We need them. We need these specialists. I want that person doing my surgery. But I think that it's important that we bring back into the fold the benefit of the person who is a multi-passionate and it doesn't fit into that linear path, so that it isn't so hard for them. Because there's such a beauty in the multi-passionate person, because they are able to innovate. They're going to be that outside the box thinker. And so you think about in a workplace, for instance, if you have everyone is a specialist and they're come to the table for something that they're creating new, they only can think within the confines of what they know. When you bring in this multi-passionate person who has a little dabble in all of it, they're not an expert in any of it, but they have an understanding of all these pieces, they're going to bring something new to the table and bridge the gap of communication between the different specialties, so that now they all can collaborate together to make something even greater.
Oh, I love that.
And so that is one of the reasons why I think it's so important to recognize the role of the multi-passionate. It's not to put them ahead of the specialist or whatever, or put them in line. It's just to say, like, we as a community all benefit from each other. And we as multi-passionates need the specialist, because we're going to come up with this grand concept and, pulled in, but then somebody has to take that ball then with the deeper knowledge and take it to the goal, because that's probably not our role.
Understood. That's a very good point. Very good point. And you said it so succinctly, and I can actually picture that as you're saying it. In a couple of points, if you could touch on the ebb and flow between the multi-passionate and the person who is that has that one purpose. And that's, I'm going to say it as that's their calling, that's their focus, that's their intention. But having a little bit of underlying well-roundedness, that's what's coming to my mind.
Yeah.
Where seems to be a middle of the road between the one road purpose and the multi-passionate. It's that well-roundedness combination. So is there someone in the middle? And how can we support those around us that are either or, if you are a multi-passionate? So if you have, let's say you have children, and this is probably a wide topic, a big question, but if you have children and one is and one isn't, or they neither are, they're both a linear, how do you navigate that? You're a mom, so I don't know what you're finding in your journey as a mom.
So, okay, so we'll start with the first part, because as a multi-passionate, I'm a little bit scattery, so I'm not even sure that I ever answered any of your questions the way you asked me. So I'm going to back up for a second. So I think there is a person in the middle. I think there is a person who doesn't have just the one thing where they can just be all in forever, but they also don't feel called to have a bunch of things. So I do think there is that person in the middle, where like the idea of like constant change and bringing in multiple things, that's overwhelming. But the idea of one thing is also overwhelming or stifling, right? So that I think there is that person in the middle, which is awesome, because that's that whole concept of bringing in an entire community of people, and we all bring something unique and special to the table, right? So we need that. However, I will say that probably it's an interesting thing, because you look at that person in the middle, and in some ways they are very much a specialist, right? Like, and maybe it's for seasons of their time, right? So right now they're a mother or a student, and they go for years and years as students, and they don't just get 1 degree, they get 2 degrees or 3 degrees or whatever. And their purpose is to be a student and to just pull in as much knowledge as possible. And then now they're going to jump into whatever that career is, and they're going to do that through until X. And now, okay, that changed and ended, and now they do the next thing. So they have this path of sort of that linear person, But on the other side, there also a portion of the multi-passionate where they can change and adapt and enjoy that process too, because that season of their time ended, right? For whether they chose it or life happened to them and they had to choose it.
Mhm.
So I think that probably the majority of people are that middle section where they have a piece of just wanting to have this really focused niche that they feel comfortable in, that is their comfort zone, that they can be all into, and they're not guessing each day what they might be doing. But they also want to have the ability and the permission to make changes if they need to. I think probably that is where the majority of people are. Answer that first question.
All pieces of the puzzle.
Right. And they're important, right? All important.
Mhm.
As far as navigating around the different pieces, I didn't realize until in the last few years how I have 3 children and then 3 bonus children.
Mhm.
And it's interesting when you ask me that, because I think about each of those kids and how do they fit in. And I think that they're either a multi-passionate or they're that middle person. I don't truly have anyone in my direct family that I can think of that's super linear. And I think maybe that comes from that if they had wanted to be super linear, because our lives are, because I'm so the extreme multi-passionate, their lives changed all the time. Where we lived, where they went to school, the things I was doing, the things they were exposed to, they were so exposed that I didn't even know that linear path. So, I think you emulate that out. So they sort of ended up becoming sort of that middle person if they weren't a multi-passionate, because it just wasn't that just wasn't modeled in our house, and not on purpose. It's just not who I am or my husband. Or now my kids, my husband with my children, he was much more of a linear person, but more out of fear to make change, not because he loved what he did. And so it didn't even create that environment of like, oh, like, look, I can like have this passion that I love and just be all in all the time. So they never had that container to learn from.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. I'm going to really think about that more, Kathleen.
You're already sparking some thoughts from memories in my life as to how I might look at that a little differently now.
Yeah. And I think so.
Perspectives.
On that interesting note, when I started doing this work and putting it out there, my longest friend, I've known her since I was 10. And we went to grade school together, and we are literally complete opposites. I liked cats, she liked dogs. We are politically opposite. Just opposites, but we've been friends for years. And it's funny because we have completely different lives. She got married pretty young. She's still with the same man. They had one child. They bought their first house that they are still in. I mean, it's interesting. She has learned to like cats, though, I will say, but she has a bunch of dogs. It's interesting because when I put this out there and I shared with her like what I was going to be doing, she called me up, and her husband she's been the same job. She's had 2 jobs her life. When she was young as a grocery store, and then she went into this company that she's worked, and she's just worked her way up, and it's been the same company, right? Completely opposite of me. And it's interesting because when she called me, it was like, I had this like, she had the aha moment in hearing what I had to say. in that way around the multi-passionate, because she goes, wow, I really never thought about it. She goes, I was always in awe of the fact that you could just pivot and change and do something new and it didn't bother you and you were out there and doing. And I always thought, wow, this is so cool. Like that you do it, not interested, scary, like not interested in doing it. But she thought it was really neat that I did it. She didn't have negative feelings towards it. But she said it was interesting because her and her husband both listened and they're both the same way. And they said it was interesting to them to go, oh, like this is just how they're wired. Also, then that is also how they are wired. And their first thoughts were like, oh my gosh, how does she not have a list in the morning of the thing? Like, how do you know if you accomplished anything if you didn't have exactly what you were going to do and you cross it off and you're doing it? Like, how do you know where that you succeeded? And I'm like, oh, because you measure it so differently than I do. Like you think of what that success is in such a different way than I do, or an accomplishment. And it was really insightful to hear someone on kind of that other side, like completely on the other spectrum from me, who is a dear friend who I've known forever and never really thought about it. And the other thing she says, her husband, Mike, said, wow, his longest friend since he was 9 years old is just like me. Isn't that interesting?
It really
That
is.
they paired up with their longest friends that are their opposites. And what does that mean?
Balance, yin and yang, hot, cold,
Yeah,
sun and light.
right? They
There's-
married someone that fit with them because we would drive them crazy in
Yeah.
their household. Like they couldn't have handled that. But they also like having it around.
It is very interesting. It's such a
Yeah.
great topic. And you just said measuring, and that triggered a thought. Do you ever find, when people are talking about, you set your goals and you have to measure your goals, you do it in this manner. I struggle with that measuring. I struggle with measuring and cooking. I don't follow recipes. I just
Don't
wait.
either. Don't either.
I can't ever remember what I did, but
Yes.
the measuring, it's really funny that you say that because I'm seeing in myself the difficulty in tracking things like that.
Because you're trying to fit who you are into the patterns and processes of people that work more linear.
Yeah.
And I gave up on that whole traditional way of setting goals a long time ago because I realized I always would feel like a failure because I don't do it the same way.
Mhm.
That doesn't serve me correctly. Like I like writing them. I like putting down something that is what I want in a
Mhm.
way. And so what I found that works for me is I do these things that I learned years ago called blue cards, and I take blue note cards, and the reason is because we have these white note cards that everybody used to use and they're just out there. So this blue ones, because it could be whatever, but it had a trigger point, right? That it was different. And writing whatever it was, like I am a pilot. This is a great example because, and this was many years ago that I wrote this, many, many, many years ago. And it was just during this sort of like brainstorming time with myself of like, what am I wanting to do? Where do I want to be? And just saying that I was, right? Whatever they were. And then putting those aside and literally who the hell knows where they go? Like they just end up in my house somewhere or in a drawer or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's because that's truer to me, right? Like I'm not the person that's got a notebook, a journal that I'm going to look back on my goals and I'm going to go, yep, I made that one and I did this. I just throw them out into the universe and let it be in the way that works for me. That's just kind of this pot of just toss it up in the air and let the confetti fall and it's just going to be where it is. But those goals still happen. But I don't have to put a time frame on them because I like to go with what feels right now. And so if I put a time frame on it, then I'm forcing my life to go there. And I'll miss something that gets presented to me because I'm like, oh, that's not on that path. That's not on that goal. And I would miss out on so many of the incredible things that I've done if I only focused on whatever that goal would have been.
And some
I
of
feel
those
like
things
I would have missed out.
and some of those things popping up may have been exactly what you needed to reach that point.
Yes. Yes. And so I was able to, you grow in the pieces that you don't even know you're missing when you just when I let my life flow that way. Do I think that this style works for everybody? Heck no. But I do think that it probably works pretty well for the real true multi-passionate, because we are really ready to flow, which also means that back to that whole measuring of things and what is that success and what is that end goal, it looks different to me than it's going to look to somebody else.
Good
Right?
point.
If I am going to school for something, I want to be really careful here, because it's not that you just try something and then you give it up and oh, it got hard and you just throw it away. I don't do that. I definitely go, okay, I'm gonna do, I was a doula. I'm a certified doula. It was really important to me, and I finished all of the process. I became a doula. I practiced it, but then there came a point where it wasn't serving me anymore, and I let it go. It's just one example. It wasn't, oh, I took 3 classes and oh, it was hard and oh, I didn't know how to get clients. Oh, I'm out. No, 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 no. It's doing something to the point of completion that feels like you've accomplished what you set out to do, but then being willing to go, other people are like, well, you spent money and you spend these hours and you built this clientele. Why would you walk away from it? It's successful. Okay. But it's not, it is, but it's not serving me anymore. And so that endpoint would look so different to somebody else, right? You spent so much money and time and effort on learning all this and you're good at it and people like it. Okay. But I'm not, this is my path. This is my time. And so I served in that community until it wasn't the community anymore for me.
Mhm. I can so relate to what you're saying. And even on whether it be a larger scale, a medium, or even the smallest scale of seeing something that I've wanted to do and felt that I could not do it, fear, I'm not able to do that. And then actually doing it and then saying, okay, wow, first of all, totally jazzed because I did it.
Yes. Yes.
But in accomplishing it, it gave me awareness of more strength that I thought I didn't have, an ability.
Yeah.
So now I don't need to do that again.
Right.
Now I'm supposed to take that and apply it to the next step on my path. That has happened to me on smaller scale things multiple times. And I see that as, and I laugh and I say, I don't need to do that again. Well, I don't, because it served its purpose. It does not serve me to do it again, because I need
Yes.
to take what I've learned and apply it. And I see that, and I've said that for years, and I never really understood it as what we're talking about today. But everything I have done since I was, we'll just say 18 years old, everything that I've done, every step and different thing that I've done has taught me something. It's either taught me something I want, or it's absolutely taught me something I don't want. It's helped me find something within myself. It is carried over to each next thing, which has brought me to where I am today. Was it all easy? Was it some of it very painful? Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes, exactly.
But I can see in what you're saying is I understand when you're ready to step away from that, it is almost a calling to step away from it because we're not meant to stay there.
Right. Right. when I talk to people about change, just in general, like not just the multi-passionate, but just people in general about change, and they're like, I'm so afraid to make a change, or, you know, and a couple things come up around that. It's this idea of fear of starting over, like, what is that going to look like, and the heartache of that. And also like, okay, but I put so much money and so much effort and so much time, and so like, how can I just walk away from this career? How can I just walk away? I spent 8 years in college to do this thing. Like, how can I just go, I don't want to do this? And I say, but just what you're saying, you're not, it doesn't devalue what you did by doing something different. Just the opposite. It's, you do take, every time you make a change, you're taking those skills with you, that knowledge with you, those feelings, those emotions, that growth that comes with you. And the super cool thing about it is that also means that A, you're better at being a beginner because you know what it feels like. So it's not so scary. It starts to be less scary each time you do it. And secondly, you get to have this really fast start, because when you take, so many of the things we do have sort of a foundation that's similar, even if the thing itself is completely different. How you learn something, the way you process it, you know, if you're starting businesses, if you've learned how to communicate with people, you've learned how to whatever, you bring that with you, and your learning curve, it's like you get to start as a junior instead of a freshman.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. You're right.
And so you get to take that. I mean, think about that. If you go and get your bachelor's degree, you've got English 101 and English 102 and certain level of math and certain sciences that you have to take. And then you get that degree, and then you go, oh man, I want to go back to school and be this, just for instance. Guess what? All that prereq courses from the other degrees count. You don't have to take any of those again. You get to just go, oh, I'm jumping in here.
Mhm.
I can jump in the midpoint. I don't have to jump in the shallow end. And so I think that's what makes it so great, that even for the non-multi-passionate, because right now in our world, things are changing and people are being forced to change even when they don't want to, much more than have in years. These 30-year careers are much more non-existent. People that never in a million years thought their company would go under, or they would lay people off, or their job title would change, are finding themselves in a whole new spot. And I think that this is a role for the multi-passionate, is to help those people who have never made change or don't know how, or are paralyzed by it, to share the wisdom of how do you do that? Help be that bridge for them to not be paralyzed by fear, and to recognize that it's okay, and that you're going to bring those things, and you're going to reinvent yourself, and it's going to be beautiful on the other side. And also, if you start down a path and it doesn't feel right, now you can say, back up, I'm going to go this way instead. And
You're going
there's
to be
no
fine.
shame. Yeah,
Yes.
there's no shame. There's no judgment on that. And if there is, that's a reflection of that person that's giving you that. And you just need to
Exactly.
let that go and realize that you get to be you, and you're going to be okay. And so I actually think that if a lot of these people that are in this more linear, fit better in the linear society, they're comfortable there, and they're finding themselves in this upheaval of change, seek out someone that is a multi-passionate, someone that's done a million things, a person that you before would look at and go, why can't they just stick to one thing? Dude, you're going to be your lifeline, because they've changed so many times. I mean, for me, my thing, everyone has supposed to have a thing in this world. My thing is change. That is my thing. Variety, creating new, reinventing, pivoting, that is my thing. And so for people that are going through it and don't know how to do it, people like me are going to be a great source of information for you.
Now, you're not saying though that the change doesn't come without challenges.
Oh, heck no. There's
Right.
so much challenge. There's a lot of times pain and grief and struggle. And that's the other thing. It's like, you can't just give up because it got hard. And that's big. I think that's one of the things that really defines a multi-passionate as opposed to a person that's just flighty, is that the multi-passionate, when it gets hard or it's challenging, they actually dig in and push forward through it because they set out for something, even though it might not look like what society thought the end point could be. They set out for something and they're going to push through to get there. It's not the passive person. It's much more that person that is like, it's passion. It's passion. You want to succeed. You want to be able to go, yes, I did what I came here to do. Now I can let it go if I found that it's not what I wanted, but I got there. Instead of, oh, it's hard. Oh, I've hit my dip. I'm out. That's not it. It's lean in when it's hard, get through it, and then go, okay, now I can make a decision of whether it's time to change or do something different. And it is going to be, it's hard. Change is hard. Of course it is. It does get easier the more you do it.
I call it choosing your hard.
Yes.
Choose your hard.
Yes. And I think and the whole reason I did permission to change is not about permission from others. It's permission from yourself, for yourself. You give yourself the permission to be you, to be authentic, to make changes in whatever time and way that is for you. If you're a slow changer, okay, great. You're a quick changer, that's all right too. Whatever it is. But the bottom line is you're gonna have change in your life. There's nobody that stays constant. Nothing ever does. There's something in your world that's gonna change. You raise kids, they leave the house. Mm-hmm. You get married, or you're come out and people get married. That's a different person than the single person. Your job goes away. You retire. Life happens regardless. Our parents pass away. Our friends, we lose friends. Friendships come and go. There's change in our lives all the time. And so it's the more we learn to enjoy the change, then when things happen to us, when we learn how to navigate change that we choose to make, the easier it makes change that happens to us, because we've learned to have a mindset around change that's different. We're not paralyzed by it. So we can look at the things that happen to us that are painful, like I lost my dad. You feel very, even as an adult child, it's hard. It's a change that you aren't ready for and you don't want to have. But by being resilient to change, I was able to navigate it through in a different way and able to really push through the grief and recognize how I was defined. Or it was a grief point when my kids moved out, right? It's like, now I'm not a mother. I mean, I'm always a mother, but they're not in my house. They're not my little ducklings, and they're doing their own things. And I have a couple of them that moved states, and I didn't stop being a mom, but my role changed.
Yes.
And I was able to pivot from that easier. And I witnessed recently, as kind of more of my friends are at that age too. We all have kids in their 20s, right? That I have one that's in 30, but that are moving out and going on, and they've graduated college and now they're wanting to move states or move whatever. And the friends that that don't do change well, that's paralyzing for them. Like their entire identity is wrapped up in that.
Yes. Not good deal.
And they
Yes.
really struggle with it. And I think some of that helps me really go, you know what? I feel thankful to be a multi-passionate. I'm thankful that I have embraced change and that I can work through. It's not easy. Like it's hard when my kids go. I still feel sad. I still miss them. But I can come at it with a different perspective and I'm excited for them. And I can really, truly be supportive of that and recognize that that's not my identity. Yeah, I'm always a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an entrepreneur, whatever, but I'm much, much more than that. And I don't have to tie myself to that thing. So if my job changes, I don't have to fall apart because that's just a title in the piece that I am. It's just this tiny little piece.
And that right there about the identity is so huge. And I want everyone to grasp that, because we do as humans look and find, we think we find our identity or who we are in everything that we do, every label, every hat we wear, and that could so not be further from the truth. And being similar as you and I are, we get that, and we can see how hard it is for some people. And that's a tough thing to pull yourself out of, to realize that, okay, if I'm not this surgeon, or if I'm not this bus driver, whatever it happens to be, if I'm not this mom, my kids aren't here, who am I now? No, you are always you. You're always beautiful, powerful, exciting you. Those labels, those hats that we wear if they disappear, we don't. We're still here.
Right. Yes, and those pieces are just a season of time.
Yes.
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 Just a portion of who we are. And it does make me sad to see people struggle with that loss of identity. And you know what I think, where I think that comes from, I think two things maybe is it's back to that whole conditioning that we have of this very linear society, right? Like this conditioning of being the one thing, right? Oh, you're a homemaker, like that's what you are, or you're a stay-at-home mom, or you're a school teacher, or you're a fireman, or whatever. And it's not, when we meet people, it's, what do you do? Or, we ask, oh, what do you do for a living? What, and then it's, oh, I'm a teacher, right? Or whatever, like you have this label. And then that becomes what what you know yourself as, and that's what other people start to just think. And we program ourselves to have this one identity, or a couple identities, like, you work from home or you work and then you raise a family or whatever, but we put ourselves in these, I'm a wife or whatever, you put yourselves in these really categories of things, because I think that's what society expects from us. We like to label everything.
Yes,
and
do.
So we've labeled this, and then when it disappears or you don't want to be that anymore, that's part of what I think creates such paralyzation around change, is because then we don't know what our identity is, because we don't spend enough time, I don't think, recognizing the whole self. And so I think that plays into this. The other part, I think, is the other thing that's a huge part of why that happens, is that self-care is such a second place thing in our lives. So we're always doing for everyone else, and those create the labels of who we are. And so when we're not reflecting on ourselves and giving ourselves time to explore ourselves and to and have quiet time and to just do the things we love to do that light us up, that are us, then when one of those big chunks of who we are that we spend all of our time on go away or change, we don't remember how, because we haven't been doing it, right? Like we did when we were kids, where we're like oblivious to the world around us and we're doing what makes us happy, right? Like,
In the
you know,
moment. Mhm.
yeah, why are you putting water on the chalk? Well, because it's interesting to them, right? Like it's, it's whatever. Like they're just enjoying the moment, and they're giving them, they're holding their blanket because that's their self way to soothe or whatever. And then as soon as we start, I think we are designed to serve others, but we have to remember ourselves too. And I think we've become so competitive of a society and so focused on being the best at everything that we don't take time to just be.
I agree completely, completely. And you have done, I always like to have women share their accomplishments, what they've achieved, to maybe it might not be what the next person specifically wants to achieve, but it might help inspire them to do something that they do. So if you could
Mhm.
share, because you are a pilot.
I am. So I
And
made
that's not
that blue
something that I
card.
would do, but it would inspire me to do something else. So could you touch on that a little bit? And then please tell me about the elephants.
Elephants. Um, so okay, so being a pilot, so that's in right. I said I did this blue card many, many, many years ago. I don't know how many, 20 years. That I'm a pilot. And so of course, and then, I had kids and raised families and ran businesses, and it just wasn't in the cards. It's not an inexpensive venture to come into. And I didn't have a purpose for it. Like I just wanted to do it. Right. And so a couple years ago, 4 years, 3 years ago now, 3 years ago, I decided that, okay, I had shed some other things. I had some room in my world that I was going to go for it. And I was going to become pilot. And I didn't know where it was going to lead me. I didn't know if I wanted to do it in the world of a career in it, or if I just wanted to have it for myself, or what did that look like. But I did. I made it, and I had this kind of goal for myself of like, okay, I want to do it in a certain amount of time, and I'd like to complete it some point in this 1 year or whatever. Or, I really wanted a shortened period of time. But so I set out, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, I think, of all the certificates and programs and schooling and things that I've done. Partially because I was older and it was so foreign. I mean, talking on the radio is in codes, and to the ATC is like a foreign language. So you're learning that, and you have to know all the aspects of how the plane works and the mechanical side and all of that, and all the ground school and the weather and the different airspaces. And it is like literally when people say like, open up, here's a fire hose, that's what it felt like. It was like so overwhelming, so taxing. And so, I mean, I would get up at 4, it was in the summer. I started in the summer. It was 100 and something degrees. Small aircraft, when you're learning, most of them do not have AC. So I get up at 4:30 to go flying when it was cooler weather and it was not as bumpy and it was not as hot. And it was crazy, so much fun. And so, I mean, every single day was like, I couldn't wait to get to the airfield and wait to do it. And I hated my ground school, but I had to do that because you can't finish your
Can't get in the air
certificate
unless you
without
do.
your ground school. So you have to do that part. And it's like the flying part is the fun part. And the flying part is actually the easy part. Actually, it's all the stuff that you have to know to do it. And it was so incredible. And it was so fun. I mean, I remember like first few times and you're in there and you're taxing and just trying to get the airplane to move with your feet, like, and it was like, how am I ever going to be able, like, I'm terrible at this. This is horrible, and I'm like, and then it's like, then you start to just do it with a little bit more. And then pretty soon you don't even think about it. Like, landings and takeoffs are my favorite. And it was like this challenge to get better and better and better. And, you know, landings are by far my favorite. It's my favorite thing. And it's like, I was like, I did it. Like I did it. And I had some challenges with my medical, so it took me a little bit longer than I had hoped. So the day after I turned 45 is when I did my tech ride. I tried to get it in before, but I couldn't get it scheduled. I was ready months before that, but that's just how, there's a lot of stuff that goes with it, timing wise and stuff. So as soon as I was able to, I finally did my tech ride, and it was so exciting. So the day after my birthday, and it's really fun. And I was so excited to be like, I did this, right? And I had this amazing community of women pilots that I tapped into, because I've spoken before that the people you surround yourself help you make you successful. And it's very
Yes.
important to have those expanders and those people that help you to that next level. And so I had this incredible group of women pilots. They're less than 6% of the world's, we're up to 7% now of women are pilots. But so I have this awesome group that inspired me and would, help me to figure it out when I was like hitting my dip and going, there's no way I can do this. Yes, you can. Here's what I learned. And, they'd show a way that they got through this part about, the different levels of airspace, which is very complicated. And like, my brain would be like, how do I remember that? And how do I know if I'm 1,000 feet below the cloud? Like, just weird things that you're like, what? Things I didn't know I was going to have to know, all the meteorology classes and like all these things I didn't know went into this. I mean, thinking back, you're like, duh, but I didn't think about that. I just wanted to fly. And so, yeah, it was one of the greatest, I felt it was an incredible accomplishment for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm hoping that because this is audio, I'm seeing you. We are in Zoom together, and I am seeing you, and I am getting the joy of seeing your eyes light up and the expressions, and just see you so jazzed. And I'm hoping that people are able to see that in their minds as they hear you tell that story, because I get that jazzed feeling. And that's probably one of my biggest purposes in life, and why I serve women and help them, because I want them to experience that same jazzed feeling over and over and over again.
Yes. For me, that big piece of that was going, who in their right mind in their 40s thinks that this is the time you go get your pilot's, like, right? It's like, it's never too late to do something new. It's never too late to do that thing that you think, sometimes it can't look exactly like you thought it would because there are constraints around stuff. Like, I get that. Like, I know, like, if you wanted to be a commercial pilot, you have to be done at 65. So, yes, you can't start at 65 and think you're going to go work for the airlines. I get that. There are constraints, but it doesn't mean you can't get your pilot certificate. Or, okay, maybe you don't have you can't see very well. So, okay, so maybe you're just a co-pilot. Like, my point is, like, that's just one example, but yes, I know that it can't always look exactly how you doing it, but I don't think it's ever too late to be in the world around things that you want to be around and want to be involved in. Sometimes we just have to alter how it looks a little bit, or how we originally envisioned it being, but I think that, so that was big for me. And I think it was really great for my kids to see, like,
Yes.
Yes, you can do anything. You can do anything.
Legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Where did you find?
What do you want to know about my elephants?
Well, I was scrolling through the pictures, and of course, animals, with the exception of alligators, I adore animals, and elephants. They're just so cool. So, and I saw you petting elephants. Where and how?
So a few years ago, my one daughter and my mother and I had this incredible opportunity to spend 3 weeks in Thailand. And just the three of us went, and it was really a life-changing trip. One of the things, we spent a week in Bangkok, a week in Chiang Mai, and a week in Krabi. So Krabi's like on the ocean, and Chiang Mai is like in the mountains. And then Bangkok is like what I say is like Asia, New York, right? Like it's very like this city of and malls and fashion and it was really cool. So we did a week in each and really explored. And when we were in Chiang Mai, one of the things that we really wanted to do was and visit this elephant sanctuary. And so we did a lot of research to make sure that we found a place that was, you know, doing things for the right reasons and not just a tourist trap, and that the elephants were being treated correctly and all these things, right? And so we found this elephant sanctuary that what they do is they take elephants that are, some of them come from things like circuses and stuff, but that's actually not where the majority of they come from. What's really interesting about Thailand is we don't think about it, and it's not the same as even it was a few years ago, but in Thailand, elephants are like, were like their cars in a lot of sense. Like they were a piece of their homestead that served a huge purpose. Like it is, they rode them into town. They used them for their fields. Like they were in like a, they were their tractor and their car and they were this, and their family dog in a sense. Like it was really, and the elephants live a really long time. So they're part of a family. This elephant is part of a family. And as the human family, as they have this role in this world of these humans, and then they are kind of, the elder person who had this elephant passes on, then the next generation, because the elephant lives longer, is then kind of passed down and becomes the next, person's sort of all these things, right? So that, kids rode them to school and all these things. Well, what's happened is now there's scooters and cars and all these things. So, and young people are leaving their communities. They're not staying in their communities forever. So these farm communities that used elephants and had elephants as this part of their daily everything, now when Pa is ready to pass them down, the kid's not there and they don't want to. Like they don't want to provide pounds and pounds of sugar cane every day and go out in the fields to cut it for the elephant to eat. And, they're not brushing and washing and doing all these care things. That they're like going off to the city to go to school, and they're riding their scooters. And so you have all these elephants that are just, there's no one to take them. Like, and so that's where they come from, is most of them at this sanctuary are from families that just,
Didn't care anymore.
sorry, can't, there's no one to care for them. And they take a lot of care. And so I take a lot of food, really, not so much care, but so the sanctuary would take them. And so it was such a cool experience because we got to go there and they're so loved there and so cared for. And we had this, it was called, it was an elephant caretaker for a day. So we spent an entire day, and we first fed them to introduce ourselves and to like meet them and like get to know them. And then we took them in the river and bathed them, brushed them and bathed them, and like, got them to like be like, oh, okay, like you're my person. Like we were all assigned an elephant, and like, and we had the Marahoot, which is like their guide, I guess, like it's their elephant buddy, right? The person that kind of trainer in a way that works with them. And so we had one of them, which each of us, so that the elephant was like, okay, that's my normal person, and now here's my new person that I'm going to work with. And then we actually donned on the clothing of the Marahoot so that we were dressed with what the elephants are used to. And then we were able to, we did take a small ride on them. They do not put them in the you had to ride them bareback, because the people that do the ones where they put the seats on them, that's what's very harmful to the elephants. And it was an interesting thing, because it's like you meet your elephant and you wash them and bathe them, and then it's the elephant is sort of decides if you're going to get to ride them or not, right? Their permission. So it was very interesting, because each elephant had a different way. Like one used its trunk to help lift you up, and one would bow down to let you get on, and one lifted its leg up. Like, so everybody had, and it was like, once you made that connection, it was like, okay, here we go. And I know there's going to be people out there like, oh, you should never ride them. When you go and you learn and you experience, it was okay. Like I felt okay. And it's a very short ride. You just kind of go down a river and then you get off. And, but the elephants led us up. They weren't forced to do it. It was completely just
They gave
this connection with this animal that they gave you this permission to do so. And, we walked down, and then they were led into their pasture of food where they have all their food, and they were let to run and just go. And we had this beautiful lunch that they laid out for us. And then the elephants came back over to us, and there was a big water hole, giant, like a lake. And the elephants got in the lake, and we got in the lake with them, and it was freezing cold, by the way. I mean, it was hot outside, but oh my gosh, like ice cube cold. And we played with them, and they sprayed us with water, and we just got to play in the water with them and basically say, thank you. Thank you for this day. Like, thank you for letting us in your world. And they were free to come and go if they didn't want to play, like there was no, like, they weren't hoarding them in. They weren't, there was no reins on them. Like this was just, and so you had this really beautiful connection to these animals in your own way. And it was incredible. It was so life-changing, really.
Thank you so much for sharing. I just it makes me want to run right out. Okay, what's on of course, I've been working on my bucket list, so we might have more things. It won't be flying, but maybe something else. But thank you so much. I can see how important and how these have touched deeply into your heart and soul. So thank you very much for sharing them.
They're beautiful animals.
Oh, I can't thank you enough for being here with me today. You have really sparked my thinking, and I'm sure sparked others' thinking as well. And I hope the conversation will continue another time, because I have a feeling you're going to have a whole lot more to share.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. How might people reach you?
So my podcast is Permission to Change. I have a podcast called Permission to Change about, all about that, about change. And then I'm on Instagram at Jenn.Phipps1, which is my name. And then I have a website, JennPhipps.com, and that's the best place to reach me. And I
will put all of those into the show notes so that people will be able to reach out to you and hopefully start a conversation, find out more about you. And I hope you'll come back one day. I'm so thrilled to have you in my life, feeling so blessed. And thank you for enlightening, holding space for me to learn more about who I am. I think that's really what I want to say. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on and letting me share my story, and hopefully it's helpful to somebody, and not just a bunch of rambling, but it's helpful to someone to know that there's others that like you out there, and it's okay.
It is okay. We are not broken. Thank you. And we will definitely come back and meet again.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to today's bonus episode with Jenn Phipps. I found it to be so enlightening and so interesting that I do want to continue the conversation in the future. If you too found it inspiring, please feel free to share with your family and friends, especially if you know any multi-passionate people. Again, thank you for listening. I will leave contact information in the show notes in case you would like to reach out to Jenn directly. Make it a great day. Peace and blessings.